Hey Rickstorians! It's time for another tutorial, and I'm happy to announce that I'm finally done with this tutorial. I've been working on the circuitry since before I left, so it's been a long time coming. This is how to double jump in Rooms 2.0. First, we're going to need 2 event receivers and an inventory item. Configure the event receivers to inventory item equipped and inventory item unequipped. Next, configure the inventory item constant with a new inventory item. This inventory item could be named something along the lines of double jump. And make sure that the enable action button is toggled on, along with the enable equip button. We're then going to spawn in 2 if chips and 2 equals chips. The output of the equal chips will go into their respective if chips. For example, the top equals chip will go into the top if chip, and the bottom equals chip will go into the bottom if chip. Then, connect the inventory item output for both event receivers to their respective equals chips. The last value of the equals chips will be attached to the inventory item constant. Lastly, connect each of the event receivers to their respective if chips. The last thing we need to do with this portion is create bool variable chips. Now you'll need to spawn 2 of them, but name them the exact same thing. Now that they're named the exact same thing, we're going to change the first bool to true, and then connect the then output of the if chip to that variable. Don't forget to connect the second if chip to the second bool chip. This is a logic gate. It's checking to see whether or not an inventory item was equipped, a specific inventory item. And we're going to get a true output when that specific inventory item was equipped, and when it is unequipped, it's going to give a false output. Setting that aside for a moment, go ahead and spawn in a new event receiver, if chip, int variable, and add chip. Connect the event receiver to the if chip, and the if chip's input of the bool is going to be connected to the output of our top bool variable that we made prior. Take the then output of the if chip and connect it to the int variable. The int variable is going to be crisscrossed into the add chip, just like this, with the output of the int variable going into the input of the add chip, and the output of the add chip going into the int variable. Change the add chip's variable to 1. Don't worry about this event receiver. We're going to return to it and configure it properly. In the meantime, go ahead and rename the int variable into something you'd like to use. For this instance, I'm going to be using jump counter. Now we'll need 2 more if chips, a less than chip, and a greater than chip. Connect the results of both the less than and greater than chips into their respective if chips. Then take both the A outputs of both of those same chips and connect it to our int variable. Continue the output into the next input for each of these chips. The reason that we are using greater than and less than chips is to control however many jumps we want the player to jump. That number is going to be in the less than chip. In this case, it's going to be a 2 because it's a double jump. The greater than chip will be a 0 because when the player jumps more than once, we want to give them a boost. But once they hit this cap, we do not want them to be able to receive that boost anymore. We're going to need a velocity set, vector3 create, vector3 split, get velocity, and an event receiver. Configure the event receiver to on player jumped. Then connect the player output to the get velocity input. Continue that into the vector3 split. Connect only the x and the z coordinates. Then connect the vector3 create output and connect it to the input of the velocity set. Also connect the player to the target of the velocity set. Wire the then output directly to the velocity set input. We're going to change the multiplier of the velocity set to say only 1, and change the vector3 create y input to be a custom height that you want your players to be jumping. For me, I'm placing that at 6.5. The very last step of this part is simply cloning the event receiver and the int variable. Configure the event receiver to onPlayerGrounded, and then simply wire it to the int variable. That way, when the player touches the ground, the jump counter resets. We will also need a player definition board and an event definition. Configure the event definition, and we'll start off by renaming it. I'm naming mine Jump Input Control. We're going to be editing the player definition board. When you edit into the player definition board, you're going to see this locomotion circuit board. Go ahead and edit into this one as well. Now, I know that there's going to be a lot of circuitry within the circuit board, but I want you to just focus on the onLocomotion jump button input. These two circuits here, the event receiver onLocomotion jump button input and the player get is grounded, we're going to be cloning these and moving it to a blank area so that we can create a new rule with them. Now that we have these two, let's create a logic gate for these two chips. Go ahead and connect the output of the equals to the input of the if, and the execution output to the input. Now what we want to do is we want to be able to press the button after we have already jumped. So, when the input is down, it's going to go into the equals chip. Now if we put is grounded, we're going to be checking to see if the player is already on the ground. So let's grab a not chip. We're going to connect the is grounded output to the input of the not and the output of the not into the equals. And lastly, we're going to need an event sender. This can be wired to the then output of the if chip. Go ahead and configure the event sender to the custom event that we created earlier. When you configure your player definition board, make sure that it is active and that you push updated definitions. There's some final detailing that needs to be done before we're finished. Remember that event receiver that I told you that we'd configure later? Well, now we can configure it to our custom event. And what kind of video game would this be without any sound effects from when you jump? So we're going to add some sound effects. Spawn in an audio player and a sound effects constant. Connect the output of velocity set to the input of audio player. That way, whenever we jump, there is a sound effect. And go ahead and configure the sound effect to whatever you like. I personally like the torch swing. As a control, here's me jumping when double jump is not equipped. And when it is equipped, and that is all for today. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, please like and subscribe so that more content like this can continue coming. There is other videos coming out in other series, which I hope you'll enjoy as well. I'll see you next time in the library, Rextorians.